I remember a couple of years ago talking to a couple of pastors from a church in a country where it was illegal to be a Christian, in a country where there was really quite significant persecution, and it was an incredibly privileged moment in my life where I was able to sit with these guys and just talk to them. And it was weird, you know, these guys are like, they're church leaders, they're pastors, and they have the same job description that I do, and yet their whole experience of what they do seemed like a world away from anything that I could relate to. And one of the things we were talking about was prayer, and they were explaining to me about the way in which their church prayed. It prayed continually. There was this constant, all day, every day, all night, every night, this vigil of prayer. There were weeks of prayer and fasting that were called for, and the whole church would come together and be involved in this. And I was just like, man, this is amazing. And I asked them this question. I said, how did you do that? How did you inspire your people to pray like that? And it took us a little while for them to understand my question. And when they understood what I was asking, they were utterly bemused by the question. And their whole thing was, well, we don't need to inspire our people to pray. We don't need to cajole people or you know, actually, our people, we know we need to pray. That was their whole thing, is prayer is not an option for us. We need, I remember one of them saying, when we gather to worship, we need God just to get through this service. And I was really struck by their sense of utter powerlessness and helplessness. And with that, the sense of total and utter dependence on God for everything, for aspects of Christian life and worship and discipleship that we probably just take for granted. But they were so acutely aware of how desperately they needed God if they were going to do anything, be anything, that the idea that they would not pray simply wouldn't enter their heads. For them, being a Christian, being the church was almost first and foremost about being a people who prayed together. And it's a conversation that has been in my head for a long time now, and I keep revisiting it and trying to think it through more deeply, because I think it might be that when we look at our own experience of prayer, that our relative prayerlessness is actually rooted in the fact that we don't maybe have that sense of absolute and utter desperation and dependence on God. Actually, we live and breathe a culture that celebrates self-reliance and self-belief. Our whole society is built on it, and we are really quite explicit about teaching that we can do anything that we want to do if we just put our mind to it. If we're just able to work hard enough and give enough time, that we can achieve whatever we want to achieve. It's a secular humanism, and it is by definition an incredibly human-focused and godless way of thinking about being a person. We can do it all, right? And the danger is that we bring that almost inevitably, insidiously, into our life together as Christians, as the people of God, as the church. You know, that we just have this underlying assumption. You know, well, of course we can do church, right? We can do anything. We can do church. I mean, we have the technology, we have the budget, we have very, very gifted people who are able to serve the church in so many ways. We have great buildings, you know, and we can do church. We don't have that sense of utter desperation. We need God if this is going to work, if this is going to be meaningful. We need God if we're going to just get through even this one act of service. And I think the problem along with that is that actually our expectations of the mission and the ministry of the church have become very, very impoverished. We have learned, I think, to do church and to do mission in a way that we can do it. That falls massively short, I think, of God's vision for what should be happening in our worship and in our evangelism and in our discipleship. That's a subject for another video. But I just wonder if our struggle as a church, our struggle to have prayer at the center of everything that we're doing, the foundation on which our life together as a church is undeniably and unambiguously built. I wonder if that struggle is rooted in a kind of a latent pride and a confidence in ourselves and in our own resources and in our own vision and in our own capacities. It might be worth thinking about. And in this context, let me just say this, that I need to confess to you that actually over the last 18 months, this whole thing about prayer has really fallen off my radar as your pastor. And one of the things that's happened in lockdown is that I've had the space and the time to reflect and to repent and to have recultivated in my own experience, in my own heart, the desire to see prayer in its privileged place within the life of the church. So when we are able to meet together and to meet together physically as the church, then you need to expect me to be coming out with a renewed emphasis on our helplessness and our utter dependence on God and on the life of prayer that sense of dependence will give voice to.